Hello, this is Jim Edlin with the Foundry Publishing Lesson for February 15, 2026. It's entitled The Good and Faithful Servant. This is our 8th lesson in the series on the teachings of Jesus in Matthew. So our focus scripture is Matthew 25, 14 through 30. It's a parable of Jesus from that collection of Jesus' teachings about the end times that we find in chapters 24 through 25. Jesus calls his followers to be faithful stewards of all he gives to us in this lesson. And what we hope our students will take away from this session is that they will use what God has given them for his kingdom and for his sake. Can I ask you personal questions? What if you had the ability to make an unlimited amount of money? What would you do with that? Or what if you had the gift of music that blessed people whenever you played or sang? What would you do with that gift? What if you were a superior athlete in some sport? What would you do? What if you could put words together into moving stories or poems? Or what if you always seemed to be able to make people feel at ease whenever they came into your presence? Or let me ask you this. What if you could put details together behind the scenes and bring everything together without ever being noticed? Or what if you had that special knack for decorating stuff, putting just the right thing in the right place so it looked really nice? Or what if children just naturally flocked to you and always wanted to be in your presence? Or let me ask you this question. What if you could sit for hours and read and study things and then write about them? Or what if you could figure out how machines work? You could take them apart and put them back together and fix them easily. What would you do with any of these special abilities? Suppose you had 5 of these special talents, or maybe you just had 2, or maybe just one of those. What would you do with it? That's the essential question Jesus asks in the parable in our scripture today. Jesus tells the story of 3 people. One was gifted with 5 bags of gold, another with 2 bags, and a third with 1 bag. Then he tells about what they did with them and what their master thought about their choices. So let's look at the scripture together. In verses 14 through 18, we see how Jesus tells us the gifts were distributed. Jesus has been giving parables about what the kingdom of heaven is like, especially what it's like in the last days. In this parable, Jesus tells about a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. Verse 14. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Verse 15. Have you ever thought about the fact that God has entrusted his wealth with you like this, Master, and that he expects you to do something with it? What do the bags of gold represent here anyway? Is Jesus simply talking about money that he's entrusted to these people, or he's entrusting to us? If you have a King James Version or some other English translation, actually, you may notice that the word there is 5 talents or 2 talents or 1 talent instead of bags of gold. A talent is actually a transliteration of the Greek word talenton, which is a measure of weight for gold or silver in that day and time. Interesting fact. The meaning of talent in our modern English, that idea of a natural skill or ability, actually derives from this particular parable. Though originally talent then might have referred simply to money in the time of Jesus, there's a long history of understanding that he's really talking about more than just money here. It includes our abilities, whatever we've been gifted with from God. So let me ask you again, have you ever thought about the fact that God has entrusted you with special abilities and that he expects you to do something with them? In Romans 12, Paul writes, "We have different gifts according to the grace given to each of us." Then he lists different kinds of gifts. He talks about preaching, serving, teaching, encouraging, giving, leading, showing mercy, and that list can go on in other parts of Scripture. In 1 Corinthians 12, Paul says, "There are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit distributes them. Now to each one, the manifestation of the Spirit is given for the common good." And later on he says they are distributed just as God determines. Well, back to our parable then. The master distributed to each according to his ability or his capacity. Do you think you have been given 5 talents? Or maybe 2 talents? Maybe you have 1 talent? If I'm guessing, I'm thinking that some of you might have said no talent. Why is that? Why do many people believe they have really no talent to offer to the church? Do you think most people are unaware of their gifts? And if so, why is it? Because God said he's given a talent, at least 1 talent, to everyone. Why is that so many are unaware of their gifts? Well, here's a very helpful exercise that maybe you could do even right now in class, is simply take a moment to share one of the gifts that you see in another person in your class. I think you might be surprised at what you'll hear. Well, verses 19 through 23 then go on to talk about the reward for using gifts. Jesus shifts the picture in this parable to the final judgment scene. The master returned and settled accounts with his servants, verse 19 says. This has been the focus of Jesus' teaching in verses 24 through 25. As I mentioned, the previous parable was about 10 virgins, 5 wise and 5 foolish. And the following parable after this one is about the division of the sheep and the goats. So the important point of this section of Matthew is that Jesus wants his followers to be ready for his return and the final judgment. Both the 5 talent and the 2 talent guys reported back to their master. They said, "I've gained more." And they used their talents to increase the kingdom. And then notice the master's response. It's beautiful words. "Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness." Verses 21 and then again in verse 23. How does that sound to you? Would you like to hear those words at the final judgment yourself? What are the servants commended for when you think about it? Is it for being super talented, for going above and beyond, for doing things that they really didn't have the ability to do? No, it sounds like what they were being commended for was just being faithful, using the gift that they had. Well, verses 24 through 30 tell us about the reward for burying gifts. The 1 talent guy reported back, he says, "I knew that you were a hard man, harvesting where you had not sown and gathering where you have not scattered seed. So I was afraid. I went out, I hid your gold in the ground. See, now here it is, what belongs to you." Verses 24 and 25. Now here's a question. Why did the 1 talent guy hide his talent? Is it that he was afraid of the master? He'd rather hide than to risk? What other reasons might a person hide their talent and not use it? Did you notice how the master replied? Said something like, "Yeah, that's okay. You did not have much to work with anyway. You're not as gifted as the other two. I didn't really expect that much from you anyway." No, that's not exactly what he said. He called him wicked and lazy and eventually worthless. And then he took away his bag. Why in the world would the master call him those names? Wicked, lazy, worthless. Why did he take away his bag then as well? He didn't have that much to start with. And then the master cast him out. Why do you think the master would react this way? Why would God cast someone into darkness where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth? That's a hard question to discuss. Well, in conclusion, in this lesson, we might ask ourselves the all-important question: what are we going to do with the gifts that God has given to us? Hopefully, you know your gifts, and if you don't, ask a trusted friend. They probably have seen it at work in you already, maybe many gifts. May the Lord find us faithful in using those gifts that He has placed in our hands. May each of us hear those beautiful words on the final day: "Well done, good and faithful servant. Come and share your master's happiness."